welcome to Behind the Story, where we learn the story behind your favourite stories. My name is Lisa Renee. I'm from the Collaborative Press, where we help authors self-publish, and I'm also a romance author of the Single Again series.
And I'm Naomi Craig, author of historical fiction, Rahab's Courage. Last show, we had a great time with Karen Beery, and she had offered a draw for avoiding marriage. So be sure to check in the show notes, and congratulations to our winner. Lisa, what are you working on this week?
Okay, well, I've got a week left to do my final edits for No Filter, and it's off to you, Naomi. You're going to fix it and make it awesome for me. I'll be sending it to my critique partners, Naomi and a few others, and then also my editor. And then it will be off to the beta readers and ready for the launch in June. So busy. What about you, Naomi?
I am just finishing up my pre-buy prequel exclusively for pre-buy. And then I'll have that off to an editor soon. So always something going on for sure.
That's excellent. Okay, well, our guest today is a biblical author as well, Naomi. So this is going to be great for you. KD Holberg. KD is a retired flight attendant who turned an empty nest into a workshop for creating stories around remarkable women. She and her husband Keith live in South Carolina and love to travel and golf. They have 5 children and 8 extraordinary grandchildren. She welcomes new friends at kdholberg.com. KD, thank you for joining us at Behind the Story.
Thank you for having me. It's quite a privilege.
Now, for those who aren't familiar with you and your writing, can you tell us a little bit about you and what you're writing?
Well, I think like Lisa just said, I retired flight attendant and raised 5 kids. And when that sweet season of my life began to end, I knew I needed a purpose, and I wanted a kingdom purpose. And God already knew what I was going to be doing next. And he truly had that next step planned out for me. And, that's pretty much my story. And I ended up getting involved in writing, and particularly in the biblical fiction area is my main interest.
Awesome. Well, your debut, The Egyptian Princess, A Story of Hagar, is quite interesting, actually. So I've been reading it, and I just like how you've done a different point of view. You've used Hagar, I guess you fictionalized her being a princess, and we want to get to how you got there with that before you're actually doing her second story as a slave. So we've got her seeing from telling the story a bit like Abraham and Sarah, how Abraham sort of pretends that Sarah is the sister, and Pharaoh takes her nearly to be his wife. Very close call there. So it's really interesting, and how you've introduced Hagar early in this way. So just tell us a bit what sparked the story, and I see you have some author notes at the back of your book explaining it. So do you want to just share a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I had first discovered Hagar during a Bible study, and we were learning about the theophanies in the Old Testament, and those are the physical manifestations of God when he actually met with people. And one night we were on Genesis 16, and the name Hagar came up, and the fact that God met with this young handmaid twice. And I realized I didn't know anything about her. So I'm a researcher by trade. I mean, that's what I love to do mostly. And I started just digging, into her life. And I discovered that the Hebrew and Arab traditions of Hagar is that she was the daughter of the Pharaoh whose harem Sarah went into in Genesis 14 when he claimed that she was just his sister. And she went into this harem, and I believe that's where they possibly met. So that, my next step was just figuring out what that looked like, what that world looked like as far as being a princess growing up in ancient Egypt. And I discovered, they were, the royal sons and daughters were educated equally. I mean, they learned how to read and write. They learned politics, mathematics, even medicine. And in doing that, it just flipped how I thought of Hagar, even in Genesis 16, thinking about her not as a lowly slave, but as a very well-educated and cultured young woman. And that became the seed of my story, just that, and the idea of, well, how did this princess end up becoming a handmaid? What happened? And that just intrigued me. And that's where my story came from.
Wonderful. And I know this is probably, I know you've broken it up in three stories about Hagar. So this is probably in book 2, I imagine. But a reader asked, Bonnie wants to know how Hagar would have felt going back to Abraham after meeting with God. Are you able to tell us about that now, or do we have to wait for another interview?
Yeah, that is in the second book. The first book just takes place in ancient Egypt. I just built that world where a royal daughter would have grown up in, and I placed Hagar and Sarah in that world. But the second one, they do go into the tribe of Abraham. And Bonnie's question is a really good question, because I really struggled with that part and why. So what happens here briefly is Hagar becomes Sarah's handmaid. Sarah gives Hagar to Abraham as a wife so they can have children through her. And then, I kind of write it as the princess rises again in Hagar when she becomes pregnant, and she believes she's above Sarah now. Sarah doesn't like that, goes back to Abraham and complains. And Abraham actually gives Hagar back to Sarah. So she's kind of been passing around, back and forth in this. Ultimately, it's a love triangle between the three of them. And Sarah becomes abusive and sends Hagar, out, well, she becomes abusive to the point Hagar flees and tries to go back to Egypt. And I always wondered about that, because she did meet with God at that time, and God sent her back into this abusive relationship. And I did struggle with that. It's like, what was that all about? And basically, I think for that time period, if she had continued on her own, it was likely she would have died and the baby would have died. And he was sending her back into the tribe to have this child and to have it in safety.
Yeah, that's it. It's definitely getting into the culture helps you understand the decisions that were made. And there's a lot of it is like, what? We wouldn't do that, and we're so thankful we're born in this time as women, but it's putting context and how, their faith still works in that environment and that culture. So that's excellent.
Right.
Okay, just a little bit more about you. So you are from South Carolina. Have you always lived there? And what's your favorite country?
No, I grew up in California. I am still to this day a California girl. As they say, I always know what time it is in the West, no matter where I am. And that's where my heart is, really. But my family actually were very Southern. They're from Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina. And after my husband retired, we ended up settling down here in South Carolina. We're in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in a golf community here. It's lovely. And we've just really enjoyed it. We get a little bit of all 4 seasons, but nothing overwhelming. We had come from the Chicago area after 20 years up there. And being a California girl, that weather was a little tough on me. So
what is your favorite country out of all the places that you've seen as a flight attendant?
Yeah, that's a tough question, because I have had the opportunity to travel all over the world. We actually lived in Hong Kong for 4 years, So we saw all of Asia, at that time. And there's so many exotic, wonderful places in Asia, India and Thailand and Hong Kong, of course, is just fascinating. But overall, my favorite country has to be England. I've always been an Anglophile since I was a little kid. I mean, it was always old British authors that I was reading, Austen and MacDonald and Dickens and all those guys. I mean, I've read everything they've ever written many times over in my life. And I love visiting England. I mean, the literary scene that goes on over there, it's quite amazing. I mean, you go to Dickens' house, you can do these literary tours, and to see just amazing things from these people. But they actually have the British Library, which houses all of their old documents, such as the Magna Carta. They have original writings from Queen Elizabeth I, from Dickens, from Beethoven, from Austen. I mean, they're actual manuscripts. You can go in there and read them. And I mean, they have everything from, way back then to all the way up to the Beatles. And you see where Lennon had scribbled some of his notes for some of his most famous songs on napkins and in restaurants and all of that. So, I always visit there and I always see something unique and just fascinating to me, mostly, with the old, like Lewis Carroll, writing. His book is all there. I mean, it's all written there. Jane Austen's desk is there. And I don't know, I've always loved kind of immersing myself somewhat into their world.
That's exciting. Have you ever been to Egypt or to the Middle East?
Yes, I did spend time researching this book. We did go to Egypt. We went over to the Holy Land. We went through the Sinai Peninsula and all of that just to, it was an amazing trip. Just being able to visit some of the ruins where a lot of these things happened. And, and finding artifacts or going into the Egyptian Museum where, just everything is housed. Egypt, we're constantly learning things about Egypt. And it makes it difficult to really write about ancient Egypt because the king's lists are very incomplete and we're making new discoveries every day. There's been one in the last year, a major, discovery made, and that'll shed more light on what really happened back then. But so I kind of had to just dig and put together what I could as far as what a life during the dynastic period of Egypt would have looked like. But it was fascinating. I loved Egypt. And of course, going to the Holy Land was unbelievable. I hope to be able to do it again and spend a little more time there. Have you been over there, Naomi, writing biblical?
No, I have been to Hong Kong and then throughout Asia, but not to Bible lands. So
yeah,
I love traveling though. That sounds like it'd be great. So
yeah, I'd put it on the top of your bucket list for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So what other hobbies do you have besides obsessing over England and making me drool with all your travel and
well, basically we do like to travel. I mean, this, with COVID and all this last year, it's the longest in my adult life I've ever been grounded. And it's been tough, not to get out there, but I was very productive. I mean, I wrote 2 novels this last year. So in that sense, it kept me in my chair and writing, but, I'm ready to get on the road again and get out there and see what's going on. But, so we do like to travel, and we also like to golf, which has kind of gone by the wayside for me. My husband's handicap has come way down since we've lived here because he's been able to play a lot. But, I've just focused on the writing aspect, and golf has kind of gone to the side for now. But I enjoy golf because it's like writing in that it keeps you present. You have to be in the present moment when you're golfing, because the minute your mind drifts, your game drifts. So you have to be right on it. And I find the same thing is true when I'm writing. I have to be in the moment. I have to be present. And the minute I start drifting away, I've drifted away from my work. So I do like, golf to me is kind of an exercise in just being present.
That's interesting. My dad's a big golfer and gets up very early in the morning to get out there.
Send him over. We got 7 courses he'd love.
Oh, yes. What is your favorite process of the writing? Is it plotting it out, or the research, the actual writing itself, editing? What's your favorite part?
My very favorite part is writing the end.
Oh, yes.
And you accomplish, you have a full manuscript, and to just be able to put, even in its roughest form, when you write the end, I mean, there's just nothing else like that.
Oh, yes.
It's just great. That sense of accomplishment. I mean, because it is an accomplishment. So many people start novels, but very few people finish novels. And, to be able to flesh it out and to stick with it and to be able to write those words, to me, is a major accomplishment. But I also love the research part, because I really could just research my whole life and not even write a word, but because I just like to learn, about different things. I've kind of been a lifelong student in that, and just, I love it. I'm always off on some bunny trail about something. So, but finishing, what it's like to finish a manuscript and just say, wow, I did it. I'm one of the 1% that actually can finish a novel. And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, along those lines, you've also not only finished novels, but you've gotten several awards for that. Congratulations. That's a wonderful accomplishment.
Thank you. Yeah.
So what would you like your readers to come away with after reading your books?
I always think I'd like them to walk away and say, wow, I didn't know that. And I want to know more about that. That was interesting. I learned something, and that's, when you're researching and you're doing things. Of course, my books are fictional, but the basic truths, biblical truths, are in there. And for anyone that wants to go on, I love it. I just heard this girl wrote me and said, she's so anxious to read the second book. And she said, I kind of cheated and went and read Genesis 16 to see what was going to happen next to Hagar. I was like, that's okay. It's okay to go read your Bible. I'm all for that. So
it's not a spoiler if it's in the Bible, right?
Right. But it's, I like it when people find, it was interesting and I want to know more. I think is the biggest thing.
Definitely. I mean, Naomi likes it when it brings people to the Bible. They want to check it out. They understand it's fiction. Right. How did you come up with that? And then what was actually the parts in the Bible? Because often there's stories which are just quite to the point. Matter of fact, this happened, sort of thing. Right. But yeah, I did like, obviously we know what sort of happens in the story, but, seeing Abraham and Sarah, like, when she comes out and like she's really annoyed with him, like she's been really lovely to the girls and everything, but in the palace, but then she sees her husband like, you did this to me. She's pretty angry. So yeah, it just puts some real emotion to it and puts in context. Yeah, that she would have been not happy to be presented as a sister, and now she's got to be with this man, and she's just trapped in this different culture, not with her own people. So it would have been a struggle for sure. So are you actually part of a critique group? Do you have people that you're in biblical fiction that you rub these ideas, and what about this? I'm thinking of putting this spin on it, or how do you work with big partners?
Well, I have an online group through Word Weavers International, which Eva Marie Everson started some years ago. And I have a very unique group in that we've become very close. I mean, we're like each other's posse in writing. And, we're all going to meet up at the Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference coming up the end of May. And, we meet once a month. And, I just trust these girls. I trust them with my writing. I trust them. 4 out of the 6 of us are published authors. And gosh, they're just, even in Word Weavers, some of the people that have sat in just to see how we were doing things, and they've said they don't have another group as tight as we are. And yeah, it's been wonderful, to have these women come alongside you and encourage you. And, we toss around ideas of, where to go to be published or this or that. So, yeah, I feel really fortunate. And I highly recommend Word Weavers for one. If not Word Weavers, then getting into a critique group with people that you trust and enjoy being around. I think that's one of the perks in writing, is to be able to share it with other writers.
Yeah, I find the Christian writing community is so supportive. Everyone wants everyone else to succeed. Our critique group has been a godsend. There's 5.5 of us, and we're really close. And none of us, everyone reads widely. Lisa, Tabitha, and Sarah do primarily romance or women's fiction. Donna does, she's just finished a Civil War novel, and then I do biblical fiction. So it's really awesome because it doesn't even have to be the same genre, the same focus or anything like that, just have the appreciation and have each other's back. Like you were saying, it's been so helpful for me, for sure.
Right. And the craft, there are rules to the craft.
Yes.
Writing as you get into it, and it goes across every genre. And, we were critiquing last week on a new piece of mine, and some of the girls just brought up, hey, you forgot this rule. It's like that constant reminder of, just whoopsie, get back into the, how to do this, how to do it properly. And, they're just really, everyone's just kind and supportive like that. They do it very gracefully and no one's mean. So.
But is there anything specific that you edited out of The Egyptian Princess?
There was a lot of what I edited out. Going into it and building that world, just when you're in that world building process, you come up with so much stuff. And there were so many interesting facts about Egypt that I wanted to write in. And you just can't. After a while, you realize, they've got to go. They're slowing down your story, because then you get into just the teaching mode about ancient Egypt, and you've gone away from the story. So anything that's slowing down the story, had to come out. But there were a lot of things, the ancient Egyptians were able to, they had a yearly inundation, the yearly flood of the Nile, and they could measure that and know whether it was going to be feast or famine for the next year. And things like that I just found so incredibly fascinating, but it really didn't have any place in my book to put it. So I had a lot of those kinds of things, just facts, interesting facts. And, they always say you have to cut your darlings, and those are my darlings, the things that I could teach. And it would be good in a nonfiction book probably, but just a lot of that stuff had to go.
You've got The Egyptian Princess, that's been out since March, and you're working on your second, the continuation. Is that what you're actually doing now? Do you want to tell us about your work in progress?
That one is actually at the editors right now. It's going through a content edit with Karen Ball. It's called More Than a Handmaid, and that takes Hagar into the first Hebrew tribe. And it's not just about her time with the tribe, but it goes on to show, she eventually is totally rejected from the tribe with her son Ishmael, but she finds a way to not only survive in the desert. Normally that's a death sentence back in those days. You're rejected from the tribe, it's likely you're going to die. But she didn't. She ended up not only surviving but thriving, and she built just a tribe of her own, actually. And that made sense to me, of her being a woman that could actually read and write in that time period. This whole it's the ultimate man's world, but she kind of had a leg up on all of that, being educated in ancient Egypt. So I think that would have helped her make some decisions and learn how to trade and be a merchant and do whatever she had to do to survive.
Wonderful. Well, we'll definitely look forward to seeing that when it comes out. Quickly, what is your website and how can viewers get a hold of you?
I'm at www.KD Holmberg, HOLMBERG, .com. So that's my website, and I can, you can get a lot of information where to find me, other places there.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on our show.
Well, thank you for having me. It really, it was a pleasure. It's nice to meet you girls.
Awesome. Well, we'll have your website in the show links. Naomi and I also give away a Navilia when you sign up to our newsletter. I have Act 1 of Polarized Love. And Naomi?
Yeah.
And I have On Desolate Heights, which is Balaam's story. And KD is also offering to do a giveaway of The Egyptian Princess, A Story of Hagar. There is a chance to win, not one, but there are 2 chances to win this book. So be sure to enter into our giveaway link in the show notes below.
Excellent. So we'll have that link for you guys to enter into that. And that's all this time. Until next time, let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. God bless. See you next time.
Amen.
So thank you again for joining us today on Behind the Story with Naomi and Lisa. Don't forget to click on the links and subscribe to our YouTube channels, and you'll keep up to date with our author interviews. Have a great week. God bless.